Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're jumping right in to the fascinating details of John 21. We are going to look at the literary history of this text, the dramatic moments out on the Sea of Galilee, and really, most importantly, the profound restoration of a broken man.
Here is our roadmap for today. We'll hit 1. The Gospel's epilogue, 2. Returning to the boats, 3. Peter's shame and reaction, 4. Agape versus Phileo, and finally, 5. Restoring the rock.
So, let's start right off with Section 1, the Gospel's epilogue, and take a scholarly look at chapter 21. Now, you might be wondering, why did John even need an epilogue? It's widely considered by scholars that chapter 20 was originally intended as the actual conclusion of the Gospel. I mean, it has a very natural, definitive ending right there. What's really fascinating here is that this edition, which was likely penned by the original author or maybe a close editorial group, definitely isn't just filler. It specifically exists to tie up the emotional loose ends of the narrative, especially regarding what actually happens to Peter after his massive failure, while also clearing up the beloved disciple's legacy. But despite being categorized as an epilogue, it's universally accepted as canon. You'll literally find it present in all ancient manuscripts because it just perfectly aligns with the truth of the events. Think about it like this. When counterfeit detectors are trained, they're never actually exposed to fake money. They are only trained to handle and recognize real money. So anything that doesn't check those exact marks is instantly known as a counterfeit. Similarly, scholars and theologians completely trust this text because it bears all the authentic marks of the true gospel. Okay, let's move right along to Section 2, returning to the boats and head back to Galilee. After everything they had just witnessed in Jerusalem, the arrest, the crucifixion, the empty tomb, Peter makes this incredibly simple, really grounded statement: I am going fishing. And the other disciples, they just agree to follow him right out onto the Sea of Tiberias. You've got to put yourself in their shoes. These guys were leaning hard on their shared history and deep camaraderie. But remember what Peter had just been through. He had experienced incredible highs and absolutely devastating lows. And right now, he is carrying the heavy, unspoken shame of denying Jesus 3 times. Honestly, he's just looking for some routine. So they fish all night long and catch absolutely nothing. But just as day is breaking, an unrecognized man on the shore calls out and tells them to cast their net on the right side of the boat. They obey, and suddenly they haul in exactly 153 large fish. And miraculously, the net doesn't even tear. Which brings us to Section 3, Peter's shame and reaction, where he literally jumps towards Jesus. Before we look at exactly what he does, we really have to remember the contrast of his names. His birth name, Simon, literally means pebble, but Jesus had renamed him Peter, which means the rock. Yet out on that boat, carrying the crushing weight of his denial, he probably feels a whole lot more like a shattered, insignificant pebble. And it is absolutely vital to note here that it wasn't the flawed man himself who was the foundational rock. It was his profound earlier confession of Jesus as the Christ and Son of God. That specific confession is exactly what delineates Christianity from all other religions. Meanwhile, back in the boat, John suddenly realizes who is standing on the shore and shouts, "It is the Lord!" What's so fascinating and honestly a bit funny is Peter's impulsive nature here. He actually puts his outer garment on, which is completely backward for swimming, and just throws himself into the sea. The guy has a serious habit of jumping out of boats, but to his credit, he is always jumping eagerly towards Jesus. While Peter is swimming, the others drag the boat in, and they come across this scene, a simple charcoal fire with fish and bread, and Jesus just invites them, "Come and have breakfast." This incredibly quiet, intimate setting on the shore is exactly where Jesus prepares to meet Peter personally, right in the very depths of his shame. All right, let's get into the linguistics in Section 4, Agape versus Phileo, and look at the disconnect happening here. When breakfast wraps up, Jesus starts questioning Peter. And if we look at the original Greek source text, Jesus uses the word agape. He is specifically asking Peter for a perfect, unconditional, divine love, the highest love possible. But Peter, man, he knows he just failed Jesus terribly a few days prior. He simply cannot bring himself to use that word. So he responds with phileo, which is a lesser, brotherly, affectionate, but ultimately imperfect human love. And this reveals a truly heartbreaking mismatch in their conversation.
Jesus is asking for divine devotion. Do you agape me? And a deeply shamed Peter is admitting he can only offer flawed human affection. Lord, you know I phileo you. And this exact exchange happens not just once, but twice.
This leads us to the climax of our explainer in section 5, Restoring the Rock, where we see Jesus meeting Peter right where he is.
Notice the exact sequence of these 3 questions. The first 2 times, Jesus asks with agape, but on the 3rd time, Jesus actually changes his own vocabulary. He drops down and asks Peter, "Do you phileo me?" He intentionally steps down to meet Peter at his exact level. This is huge. Ultimately, Jesus didn't demand the impossible from a hurting man who knew he couldn't offer perfection. He met him at the exact point of his need, right inside his shame, and gave him the grace he needed to rebuild and be whole again.
There is just a beautiful, undeniable symmetry to this whole moment. Look at the parallels here. Peter denied Jesus 3 times beside a charcoal fire in a courtyard. Now Jesus restores him 3 times beside a charcoal fire on a beach. Jesus perfectly mirrors Peter's betrayals with 3 opportunities to profess his love, effectively overriding his immense shame with a brand new command and purpose: feed my sheep.
As we wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with a final thought to ponder. We've looked at the text, the history, the Greek translations, but let's bring it home to today. If the Savior was willing to change his very vocabulary to meet a shamed, broken man exactly where he was, how does that reality transform the way you face your own shortcomings and modern faith struggles today?